In order to study anatomy, it's very important that we understand what is anatomical position. So anatomical position is a standard reference position for studying anatomy, where a person stands with feet close together, palms facing forward. Within this, we have multiple terminologies which we need to know. So the first terminology that we'll understand is called the midline. Midline is the center line of the body. So the line that you can see here running right in the center, that's called the midline. Now, any point which is close to the midline is called medial. Any point which is away from the midline is called lateral. Like for example, if I write this as A and B, if there are 2 points, we say between A and B, A is medial, B is lateral. Similarly, if we have another point C here, between B and C, B is medial, C is lateral. An example would be nose and eyes. Your nose is medial compared to your eyes, and eyes are lateral compared to the nose. Next terminology that we will see is proximal and distal, and this is mostly used for the limbs, which is hands and legs. So any part of the body which is close to the attachment is called proximal, and any point which is away from the attachment of the body is called distal. For example, we have the shoulder and we have the elbow. Between the shoulder and the elbow, we say the shoulder is proximal, the elbow is distal. But if we were to consider now the elbow and the wrist, between the elbow and the wrist, the elbow will be proximal, wrist would be distal. We can use the same thing for the legs also, for the lower limbs. If you were to consider the hips versus the knee, the hip would be considered proximal, knee would be considered distal. And similarly, if you were to consider the knee and the ankle, between the knee and the ankle, the knee would be considered proximal, the ankle would be considered distal. Next, we have superior and inferior. Superior means anything which is above, inferior means anything which is below. For example, if you were to consider the eyes and the, say, mouth, between the eyes and the eye would be superior, mouth would be inferior. Similarly, if you were to consider, say, the head versus the foot, the head would be superior, foot would be inferior. Next, we have anterior and posterior. Anterior means anything which is in front, anything which is front of, and posterior is anything which is behind. For example, if you were to consider the bicep versus the tricep, the bicep would be anterior, tricep would be posterior. Next, we have superficial and deep. Superficial means anything which is on top of, and so deep would be anything which is inside. Like for example, we have the muscle and the bone. Between the muscle and the muscle is covering the bone. Therefore, the muscle is superficial, the bone is deeper. Then we have a terminology called dorsal and plantar, and this terminology is only used with respect to the foot. So what we mean by that is the top surface of the foot is called the dorsal surface of the foot, and the bottom surface of the foot is called the plantar surface of the foot. These are the terminologies that you need to know of.